Hello, welcome back to Sustainability Live Dubai. Time now for our final panel discussion of the day, the Sustainability Strategies Forum. So there's an enormous amount for us to cover in this, so let's welcome our guests. They are Lena Osman, MD and Head Sustainable Finance West, that's Africa, Middle East, Europe and the Americas at Standard Chartered. We have Amir Kandil, Middle East and Africa, New Energy Landscape, Real Estate and Smart Cities Segment Director at Schneider Electric, and Seneca Cottam, Head of Sustainability at Al Shaya Group. Hello to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Hi, thank you for having us.
You are very, very welcome indeed. Okay, as I said, there's a tremendous amount for us to cover, and as I was saying earlier in the show, it's fantastic to have guests from such diverse industry backgrounds because it gives us such a wide scope of experience and frankly something we can all learn from. So where I'm going to start though is a place that we can all relate to really, and that comes to sustainable finance and what a role that plays in driving environmentally friendly initiatives. Lena, I'll start with you. For you, in terms of sustainability strategies, where does sustainable finance sit in that big picture?
So I think sustainable finance has a big role to play in directing capital towards places where it matters the most, but also directing capital towards what is considered green, social, sustainable, or even transition where that also makes sense. And I think by doing that and having to do it also in a very conscious way to avoid greenwashing risks is really important as well. And sustainable financing is not just kind of providing financing towards certain projects, but also factoring in sustainability-linked type of instruments into the different types of banking products that you could potentially put in place to facilitate and increase that investment towards sustainable projects that we see with our clients. So I do think it's something that has a big role, and putting it in as part of a strategy of a company has showed a lot of benefit in terms of not just kind of from a financing perspective, but it's also been a way to also lead internally the strategies of different companies and how they think about their own investments and the projects that they want to put their money in.
Thank you, Lena. Amir Kandil, obviously sustainable finance not necessarily such a huge part of your role as is for Lena. For you, where does it sit for you as part of your wider sustainability strategy at Schneider Electric?
Yeah, sure. Concerning what Lena was mentioning, I believe this is a very important topic, if I would say. It's an important enabler even for us when we are speaking with our customers. We need this kind of availability of finance that will enable the sustainability initiatives. So mainly, if you're speaking about Schneider Electric, sustainability is like a very important thing to us. We are practicing it internally and we're practicing it with our customers. So we do it even in our product, in our own portfolio. We are helping our customer to achieve their sustainability plans through 3 simple steps, which start at the beginning with strategize, which is defining the real strategy for sustainability, including the KPIs of the entity itself and how they can achieve. Then the next step is digitize, which is defining the right digital solutions that will enable the customer in order to achieve the defined KPIs that we worked on. These digital solutions varies across the different segments and varies across different applications. We are working in Schneider considering how the customer is, the challenge that the customer is facing, and we are developing our products and solutions to help him to achieve what he's looking for. So this, I believe, it's a very important step, which is choosing the right digital technology that will enable us and will lead us to the third step, which is decarbonization. And in this step, once you have the right digital technology in the place, you will be able to implement your plans, you will be able to achieve your KPIs, and it will not be like a sudden out of nowhere plan. It will be like a really good plan that will be continuous and will enable us to support the customer as well, to like always be closer to him. To give you a very simple example on that, we are all aware about the building management system. And once it's implemented in the building, it will achieve its result, which is energy saving. But after many years, the settings itself of the building management system will change. It needs to change. So the building will start to be like a static building. In order to increase the dynamism more in this building, we need to be more connected through artificial intelligence. We need to be more connected through machine learning and these kind of technologies that will enable the building to be more dynamic. And this is how exactly we see it and how we practice it internally and with our customers.
That's an excellent example. I think we've lost Seneca briefly. We'll endeavour to get them back as soon as we possibly can. We'll move on to another subject that has come up a few times during the event so far today, and that's regionalisation, about the different approaches you have to take in different parts of the world, how a strategy or a policy that's in place in North America might not work in South America, that might not work in Australasia, that might work in Europe but not in the Middle East. Different regions, different approaches. Amira, we'll start with you on this one. For you, what are the key challenges faced in implementing sustainable strategies across different regions? What are those challenges and how can they be overcome?
Yeah, I believe that the varying regulatory framework is one of the challenges, one of the important challenges that we face. When we are speaking about sustainability, we will touch the term of new energy landscape. And to define this term, because it's really important and evolving, it's more of renewable integration. It's more of a changing the overall ecosystem of the energy itself. So it will require a change in regulations, and it will require some sort of incentives and access to capital, which could be like one of the challenges in some of the regions that we are working on. The direct different level of awareness, I would say, the awareness of the country, awareness of the people working there. So we need to increase the awareness in some of the countries, and we need to make that their understanding about the sustainability and this mission is in the right place. This are some of the challenges that we are facing, and when we are working closely with our customers, we are building a complete plan. It's like a consultation, so it's not just giving a solution that will be implemented and will not make like the impact that they require. No, we start at the beginning thinking how to overcome these challenges. What are the tools? Like one of the tools that I mentioned is access to capital or access to finance, and in some cases we define and we decide to use new business models like energy as a service, which is one of the big business model that we used in some of the countries that Schneider are operating in. And it's simply integration between technology company like Schneider Electric and financial entity that are interested to invest capital in green energy and energy efficiency solutions, and EPC company that will implement the solution in addition to the customer that will be the one who will take the benefit out of that. So he's transferring the solution that can be implemented in his building, in his plant, in whatever the segment it is, that he's transferring the investment from his balance sheet to his P&L. So this kind of examples and this kind of business model that we are trying to integrate more in. We are trying to widen our network of partners. We do have some program which is called Partner of the Future, including all the partners who are working with us on this kind of new technologies, and we are keen to keep them, and we are keen to train them and to make them understand how to tackle these sustainability challenges.
Well, Lena, we'll come to you next on this one. We can tell from your job title how vast your remit is across Africa, Middle East, Europe and Americas, all vastly different territories with vastly different challenges. How do you go about implementing sustainable strategies across those different regions? Because that sounds like quite a challenge from my perspective.
Yeah, no, and it absolutely is. I keep telling people I'm in a very privileged position where I can see all of these different markets interacting very differently, and seeing sometimes clients that are in the same sectors but in different geographies doing different things, and yes, it's absolutely a challenge. And the way that we kind of need to think about it is, and the way that we have thought about it actually at Standard Chartered is through several ways. So first and foremost, you need to kind of look at how you improve access to data. What is the data that is available? Help clients with creating their own baselines, looking at where they are in the equation, and then thinking about breaking it down. What can be achieved in the short term? What is a low-hanging fruit? What is then a medium-term plan, and then what is a long-term plan? And while we are doing all of that, we are also taking into account the local and regional nuances of that market, what is actually accessible and available for these clients, while at the same time ensuring ambitiousness in achieving those targets. The focus is always on, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, and actually start doing something and start working on implementing certain solutions. And it actually differs. So the additional kind of challenge that I have in my role is also looking at the different industries. So it's not just kind of focused on one industry, but it's also, it's different industries and what they're doing. One of the things that we have implemented as a bank is an ESG advisory proposition, and that's where we look at how we support our clients with ensuring that they continue to get access to sustainable financing, or even access to capital where they're being asked questions about, what they need to have implemented, be it on transparency, reporting, disclosures, sustainability reports, and other types of advisory that we come in and support them with. So it was a bit of a stance that we took where we thought, right, this is basically how we want to help our clients in order for us to continue to provide certain levels of financing. How do you take advantage of some of the technologies, for example, that you could implement in your business? And again, focusing on that short term, medium term, and then long-term priorities. The main thing here is also and that goes to breaking it down and the importance of breaking it down. The importance of that basically is to ensure that it is easily implemented, easily accessible to these clients. And then you come to the point where, right, I now need to provide the financing against it. And the financing is where also, going back to the point that Amr made around, the mobilization of financing being the challenge, it is a challenge, and the challenge differs from one market to another. If you look at certain countries where credit risk is much higher, you still need to kind of think about solutions about how you mobilize capital, and not just mobilize it and create the appetite for it, but also to make it affordable. And that's where we rely on certain innovative structures that could include blended finance solutions. It's a very highly customized market. It depends really on the situation of a client, the industry that they are in, the geography, and therefore also other things like credit risk and what have you, and what could we put together in order to create these banking solutions rather than just kind of mobilize capital. It's more about thinking for lack of a better term, thinking outside the box of what is available for us to put in place to solve for these issues, and that's where we see kind of blended finance, for example, playing a very big role. That's where we see a lot of work being done on all of these new technologies, for example, in the energy sector. How do you ensure that you provide the right type of financing for them that probably is not going to, the traditional sources of financing or traditional types of financing are probably not going to be 100% effective for them. So how do you kind of pivot some of these structures in a way to tackle these things? And I think, again, I say I'm in a privileged position because, seeing how, things happen in the US market versus the European market versus the Middle East and Africa is really interesting. And a lot of times we are able to actually have learnings across the geographies that we can deploy across, different clients in those geographies. So where you are able to provide some peer benchmarking, and you basically have sometimes a client who is the gold standard of sustainability, let's say, in their industry, and then that's where you go and you start breaking it down to someone who's just starting that journey, and getting their feet on the ground in terms of understanding what is required of them and how they can pursue it.
Lena, I'll just add slightly to my question there with you, because you have those different areas, and you said about the nuances of different regions. For you, how important is it that you put trust in the people you have on the ground in those areas to give you the insight and the intelligence to make sure you are appreciating those nuances to help your clients and customers in those areas? How vital is it that it isn't just a top-down approach, that you trust the regional expertise?
Extremely important, because it's very easy to sit in a certain country and make assumptions about what's happening on the ground in other parts of the world. So actually at Standard Chartered, what we have done is we've created this kind of sustainable finance team that serves as a center of excellence to be on the ground in the different markets, that is kind of feeding that information into the decision makers of whether we label something as green or social or sustainable, etc. But that local understanding of the market and what is doable and what is not doable is really important, because when you're looking at certain instruments, and I spoke a little bit in the beginning about sustainability linked instruments, where you are providing a client with a banking solution and you're linking that to KPIs and targets that they have to meet over the life of the facility. In that case, those targets, there are certain guidances and standards in the market, like the sustainability linked loan principles, which basically tell you have to put in place ambitious targets. Now, what is ambitious to a client in somewhere on the African continent is probably going to be very different to what would be ambitious for a client in Europe. So taking those understandings of from the people that we have on the ground, talking to clients on a day-to-day basis, understanding realistically what they can do and how they can actually what is actually ambitious for them is really important. So that's why we actually have people on the ground in the different markets that are taken their feedback is taken into account when we are putting in place these different types of financing. So extremely important, to summarize.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that was a definite supplementary on that one, but I did find that fascinating because your remit is so wide and how you trust those different areas. Amir, what I wanted to get into next is something very much in your sector, and that's how organisations leverage these new energy landscapes to create more sustainable solutions. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. Let me at the beginning put a simple definition for the new energy landscape, which is representing the outcome of the global shift toward renewable sources. And the new energy landscape, mainly it lies at the intersection of electrification and digitization. So if you're thinking to have these kind of two terms, electrification and digitization, then you're shifting to new energy landscape. And the very simple example, when we're speaking about new energy landscape, what was the history? The history was mainly centralization. So you have a central generation coming from the utilities, or you have a central generation coming from generators. But currently we are shifting more into decentralization, where you can produce your own resources. And one of the key factors in the new energy landscape is the rise of the prosumer, a term that describe that you are both consuming and producing at the same time. So you start to shift from being just a consumer to a prosumer, and this is the only way to achieve sustainability within your entity, because part of your production need to be shifted to renewable in order to decrease your CO2 emission and accelerate your sustainability plan. So what we see right now, that a lot of companies start to think about renewable integration, and even they are going beyond that by thinking to be completely net zero, and they are asking about what will be the ways to do that, how we can achieve that. Still there is some regulation that is stuck in between this kind of KPI and what they want and what they are working on. But we are trying to find alternatives, and we are trying to find solutions that will help them and enable them to achieve that. And currently we are working with a big customer. They are building a very famous tower in 3 countries within Middle East, and they are progressing a lot in that, and they are trying to integrate different sources of energy. One of them is hydrogen, in order to achieve this kind of net zero. And under the umbrella of this kind of integration of distributed energy resources, we will see another term that we will evolve a lot, which is a microgrid. Microgrid is an important enabler in order to be able to control your distributed resources. In addition to, at the same time, when we are producing energy, we need to focus about the energy efficiency, and we need to see, are we efficient enough? Do we have any kind of waste within our organization? Otherwise, if you're not taking the two sides of the coin at the same time, you will be like producing and consuming in losses and increases your losses. So that's why energy efficiency is really important. We need to fix the basic by having this kind of energy efficiency solution, and at the same time integrating renewable energy. And across all the segments, I would say, we see that a lot in retail segment. This is one of the famous segments that are shifting toward more renewable, especially the international brands. And in Schneider Electric, we see that every company takes a unique path to advance in sustainability. So we meet them in their journey to develop strategies and implement recommendations to achieve their ambition. And over the time, it became like a very competitive advantage for us, and we started to be like a consultant in different spaces, and we started to build the plans and implement it. And this is the brilliant thing that we are providing to our customer, that we are not only building a plan, we are sharing a plan, and we are starting with ourselves. And a very simple example is like our head office in Grenoble in France is one of the most efficient in the world. It's consuming like 37 kilowatt hour per meter square, while the average European building is consuming 370 kilowatt hour per meter square. So it's very efficient, integrating different renewable resources, and a very important case that we show to our customer to understand that they can do that. It's applicable. It's not something like impossible they cannot achieve. It's applicable, and with technology and with the right consultation, we can achieve it together.
That's some fantastic examples there, Amir. Thank you. And Seneca Kossam, delighted to have you back with us. Thank you so much. You would not believe we have our guests very kindly joining us ahead of these sessions. Seneca, you're probably in our green room for 10-15 minutes without a single problem. You go to open your mouth to say something and you're gone. These things happen. Yeah. What I'd love to do quickly is just to dial back to a question I asked our other two panel members a moment ago, I'll get your thoughts on that question, and then we'll move on to some other subjects. So Lena, Amir, if you just bear with me one moment, just so I can bring Seneca into the conversation, particularly on regions, and which is proving to be a very key and repeated theme of the event today. And that's what the key challenges are of implementing sustainable strategies across different regions. Of course, you at Al Shire Group work across different countries, different challenges in different places. How do you go about implementing your strategies across borders, different regions with different challenges?
So one of the biggest challenges we've faced in trying to implement sustainability is that the regulations are so different depending upon which country you go to, which region you go to. And as a company, we manage and we operate 75 brands. So imagine the complexity of trying to tackle sustainability from the perspective of 75 different brands, and we operate in 17 different countries with 17 different sets of regulation. So that is the biggest challenge, is how do we create something, or how do we create strategies that are streamlined and effective across all of those things? So that's one area. So the regulations are very, very, very different. And just to give you an example, even in one country, the regulations can vary drastically. In UAE, as you know, the UAE is broken into several different emirates. The federal government mandated a specific law for plastics, and that law has to be implemented by each one of those emirates. So each one of those emirates is developing their own set of laws to replicate the federal legislation, and then they're rolling them out at completely different times. So what's really important is having a global standards that we can reach to, and that's what we're doing as a business. We're looking at global standards and how do we implement global standards across all of our portfolios. And the other really big challenge we have is around infrastructure. So depending upon the country, the infrastructure for solar, for recycling, for waste removal, it's very, very different across each country that we operate in. So in every country, we're having to find solutions, find vendors, and find partners that can support us. And where we can have a partner like Schneider Electric that covers multiple countries is what we try to do. We try to find partners that we can work with across multiple countries in various regions so that we can streamline those processes.
Now, Seneca, I'm not sure if you can see my notes from where you are right now. If you can, I'm impressed, because one of the places I wanted to go next is talking about governments, talking about regulation. So I'd love to continue with that thread for a moment, if I can, with all of you. Sure. Seneca, I'll start with you, as you were just getting into that there. You were talking about lining up regulations to make sure they stick together and are comparable across borders. What other initiatives would you like to see from governments that can support and accelerate sustainable development goals? What else can be done?
I mean, where I think governments really need to focus energy is on finance, and how do you support new businesses and those young startups in getting into market and working with companies like ours that are very large. So we focus a lot of time and energy on circularity. That's one of our main pillars of our sustainability strategy. And with that, I recognize that the solutions that we need for the future don't exist right now. And those solutions are being created as we speak. But those players don't necessarily have enough capital to support a business the size of Ashaya. So Ashaya Group, we operate, like I said, in 17 countries. We have over 5,000 stores across that portfolio. So where we're trying to find solutions that will support us in circularity, we don't have partners that are big enough to support those ideas. So governments creating programs, I know they have an incubator program I'm in Saudi right now. They have an incubator program here for young startups. Also in the UAE, there's an incubator for startups. And they support these organizations in getting the capital, getting the contacts, so that they can scale up quickly to support the larger businesses that can have the biggest impact. So the governments really need to focus a lot of time on those small businesses, those startups, investing in those young people, investing in those young technologies, so that we can advance much faster.
Lena Osman, I'll come to you on that one next. What more can governments and regulatory authorities do to support and accelerate sustainable development goals?
I think Seneca covered it in terms of support, and we're seeing a lot of that happen already. But support to these kind of newer entities, these startups, these ventures that are doing quite a lot in that space, but need that access to financing. I think one of the main challenges that we sometimes face in finance is can we differentiate when it comes to pricing, for example, or appetite on something that is a green or sustainable financing that gets provided, and even when we work on sustainability linked transactions. So in those situations, in those instruments, what happens is when you set targets for clients and they meet those targets, the way a sustainability linked instrument works is that you get a benefit on the margin, whereby we reduce that cost of funding by a certain amount. And equally, there is a symmetrical ratchet for a penalty if the target is not met. But the idea is that when this incentive is put in place, it basically comes out of the bank's pocket. It is something that we pay for. We do it because we actually want our clients to benefit from a sustainability strategy being implemented and KPIs and targets being met. What I would say is more work going towards either how we look at regulatory capital. How we look at regulatory capital, for example, for banks, for providing financing that is green, social, sustainable transition. That's basically helping with the overall sustainability strategy of clients, and certain clarity on some of the incentives that are being put in place, be it on the energy side of the business with the new technologies, depending on which country you're in again. But I think those would be really helpful to help facilitate. And we're seeing some of that happening. We're just not seeing it quickly enough, I would say. But then at the same time, there is quite a lot of work that is not just happening on that side of the equation, but also in looking at how you combine public and private capital to provide some of these solutions. And there is quite a lot of funding that is going towards these projects. It's just how you identify these projects, where you prioritize, for example, and how you utilize or structure solutions in a certain way that allows us to make the most benefit out of that public capital as a private sector to scale up and mobilize financing.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense, Lena. Amir Kandil, if I can come to you last on that one, about what initiatives governments can do to support those sustainable development goals. What more can government and regulation do from your perspective?
Yeah, I believe most of the points are covered, but if I will add something like incentives, offering tax incentives. And to give you an example, I was working in a project before in South Africa. And before including this tax incentive in the equation, the project was not feasible from financial point of view, and it was not bankable. We didn't find an investor to invest in. But after including these tax incentives, the story completely changed. We found that it started to be feasible, it started to be very attractive, and it's currently under implementation. So this is a point that I faced during working with the customer, and I believe it's really important. And something else, which is the international cooperation. So engaging in different agreements with international companies. Another example, sometimes you bring the investment from Middle East to invest in Africa. So it's not mandatory to find an investor in Africa to do the project in Africa itself. So this kind of international agreement will facilitate a lot, and this is another thing from my experience that worked really good. So integrating different entities together with the aim of achieving sustainability and at the same time achieving financial benefits. In addition to the education, and we will keep saying that, so implementing public awareness campaigns, educational programs, sustainability focused curriculums, and we as Schneider Electric, we are participating a lot in that as well in the universities and in the schools. And we are trying to be close to the students through different platforms. We do have the Energy University that they can easily register and take some sort of courses that will enable them to understand how to integrate the technology in order to achieve an important thing like sustainability.
Thank you, Amir Kandil at Schneider Electric. We are very nearly up to time, so I'm going to come to one final question, which I think is sometimes overlooked, even though it is absolutely critical. We're talking about sustainability strategies, and it's all well and good a company having a great strategy, a fantastic presentation, a beautiful glossy video to talk about their sustainability programs. The key is the delivery, the implementation, to make sure everything that's promised is delivered effectively. When it comes to implementation, I'd love to know your advice about how to successfully implement a strategy from all of your own perspectives. Lena, I'll start with you on this one. Your advice, just in brief, about how you go about implementing a sustainability strategy to get the maximum bang for the buck.
Yeah, I mean, look, from our perspective as a bank, I think the success that we've had is basically because we have, not just kind of employed individuals to do sustainable finance and restricted it to kind of a specific team, but it's actually been ingrained into the DNA of the rest of the bank as well, and how they look at, at the conversations that they're having with their own clients, at the products, for example, and how they structure their own products. I think, the success of implementing sustainability strategies is to kind of rally the troops around the importance of it and what it means and what they can do. You will find a lot of times a lot of individuals reaching out and saying, what does that mean from what I do on a day-to-day basis? How do I implement it? And I think that is where you can get a lot of success. The other point I would say is governance, because in order to do sustainable sustainable finance or to implement sustainability strategies, you need to make sure that you're doing the right thing. Sometimes people have the best intentions in mind, but you can be exposed to greenwashing risks. You can be exposed to kind of certain criticism around something that you've done, and again, not because anyone is trying to do any of that stuff, but basically because there isn't the right governance structure in place. So the other point for me is governance and making sure that you have the right individuals sitting in the right places, providing that advice, that oversight, and that day-to-day kind of implementation of the strategy. You asked me previously how important it is to have people on the ground. That actually talks to also to the fact that you can then scale up your sustainability strategy. But at the same time, we have governance committees, we have individuals and senior people sitting in all of these different centers, providing that constant advice and that kind of skill set or capacity building as well.
Lena Osman, thank you very much. Kandil, we'll come to you next on that one. Go and solve this problem for us. How do you go about implementing it, sustainability strategy, to get the maximum efficiency from it?
Yeah, so the first step, I would say that do the strategy, which will include the measuring, so setting a baseline for your current consumption, create a decarbonization roadmap, which is like the second point that you need to do. So first measure and find your baseline, then start by creating the roadmap, then structure a program and governance that you will follow. After that, start to communicate your KPIs, start to communicate what you want to achieve. This is the first step of the strategy. Then the next step, when we go to utilizing the digital technologies that will help you to achieve the strategy, will be to monitor your resources efficiency and your resources usage and emissions, identify the saving opportunities that you can achieve. And another example to give you, if you believe that you want to do solar energy in your home, for example, and you want to take this step, the first thing that you will do, that you will go to solar contractor and you will bring him, and he will only consider the available spaces to produce solar. He will never assess your current efficiency. So if you have losses in your home equivalent to 10 kilowatt and you're producing 20 kilowatt, then 50% of your investment is feeding losses. So saving opportunities is really important that we need to focus on. Then after that, report and benchmarking progress. So you need to benchmark with other industries, and we are keen to have like our softwares including this kind of automatic benchmarking, so you can see in the retail industry, in the real estate industry, in whatever, what is the average consumption per meter square, per cooling degree day, per heating degree day, per any kind of benchmarking activity or normalization factor that you can utilize. Then the last step will be the decarbonization. So I started to fix the basic, I start to build the pipeline, to build the baseline and understand the consumption of the customer. Then I will move to the decarbonization, which will involve more electrification for the operation, reducing to the energy usage and replacing the energy source with more efficient source like solar or any kind of renewable, and engaging the value chain, engaging your overall ecosystem to be aligned and working with you on that.
Kandil, that's incredibly thorough advice. Thank you very much indeed. And Senator Khottam, I will come to you last for the final word on this panel. How do you go about getting that implementation in place to really make sure it delivers everything you hope?
So there's 2 points that haven't been mentioned from both of those 2 thorough answers. But where we've seen the most success is where we've had the best partnerships, where we've gone outside of our direct business and gone into the wild, as I say, and we found partners to support in the projects that we've done. Going out and finding a partner that's a recycling company, finding a solar company that's your partner, and bringing together all of the pieces and all of the people that you need to complete that project and to make that impact, bringing them all together. But everything that we've said is all underpinned by data. And I don't think people really understand the importance of the data and understanding what data you need to capture, how you're going to capture it, and where you're going to capture it. This is one of the biggest challenges we have is data. And this is where I think any project will fall down if you don't know where that data is going to come from, how you're going to capture it, and where it's going to be stored. So getting the data right is imperative to creating those projects that are going to have impact.
Seneka, thank you very much indeed. Three fantastic answers to that question. It's always one I think really gives everyone something tangible to take away and learn from when you're trying to make the most of any strategy you've put in place. But I'm afraid we are up to time on this panel. Lena Osman, Amir Kandil and Seneka Cottam, thank you so much for your time and joining us here at Sustainability Live Dubai.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. An absolute pleasure.